first thing we want to do is lay down on our back. We're going to have the knees slightly bent wherever you feel comfortable. Our focus is to kind of ground our body and focus on our breaths going in and out. Put the hands on the abdomen, feel the breath coming into the belly, then pushing that air out through the mouth. Think about the muscles kind of settling into the ground, finding your shoulders, your lower back, just kind of feeling the air come in through the nose, out through the mouth, feeling the belly, the lungs, just kind of getting a sense of where you're at. Just be aware of the sounds that are around you. Take in the environment. Don't ignore them, but continue on with your breathing. Then we're going to start by some slight rocks. So we're going to reach up over our head. Just get that upper body moving a little bit. So we're just doing a couple partial crunches right here. We're trying not to work too hard. We're trying to get that body to relax. Feeling the spine curling as we come up. I like doing this on the ground because it has a little give rather than a hard floor. You're going to come up, reach those arms forward. All trying to do it while you're aware of your breath. I like to exhale as I come out. I like to do a little bit of stretching each arm side to side. Always just see what feels tighter, what feels looser. Good. Now we're going to slowly just kind of rock the legs side to side. Some nice easy movements. You don't have to get your knees down to the ground. Just kind of have them out 45 degrees and then rocking back and forth. If you want to try a slightly more difficult movement, might not be difficult for you, might be difficult for some, just try to rock back and forth with those hands or without those hands. Next, we're going to go a little bit into the quadruped position. A little bit of a child's pose in the lower half of the body. We're going to try and have those toes tucked too, so underneath us instead of those toes being flat. We're going to start off with some cat-cow of the spine. Be aware of your breath, so I'm exhaling right here. Then I'm going to be inhaling, keeping the head up. Exhaling, I'm feeling the retraction and protraction of the shoulders. A nice curled body. Rocking that back to the hips a little bit, stretching out the quads. Get in those positions and just kind of explore. You don't have to mimic exactly what I'm doing. All kind of within that safe range of motion. We're not trying to go for long extended periods of holds or a difficult time. We want this to be in a very relaxed position. As we build this up over time, just going through these simple flows, your movement will increase. What I'm going to do now is just trying to start rocking my body back onto my toes a little bit. Getting that body to be in that squat position. Feeling the pressure of the big toe. Standing up, pushing the hips forward. Then rocking back. You can try doing this also without your hands. But just give it a shot or just kind of rock back and forth what you feel is comfortable. You can see in my little stutter there. Good. Then what we're going to do is start working the legs individually. So we're just going to kind of have that back leg on the ground. Front leg where we feel comfortable in front of us. We're just going to try and stretch out. Lean that front knee forwards. Lean the hips back. Drop the chest. Kind of keep the hands planted on the ground. Add a slight rotation of your shoulder. You can even bring that arm over. So it's very similar to a Spider-Man in class. And just kind of dropping that head, rotate that neck around while we rock those hips back and forth. Then we're going to switch that up to the other leg and same thing. As we rock the hips forward, I don't have as much range of motion on this side. A lot of tension I have in that calf and my heel. But that's what I'm trying to focusing on, and going to the end range of that stretch and just kind of adding a little bit more without forcing it, without making any pain in my body. Maybe I'll spend a little bit more time up on this leg than I will the other one, because I know that's kind of where I have a lot of tension in the body. While continuing to rock forward and back during this. I'm dropping the shoulder on this side as well. Then we're going to switch kind of back and forth between the hips. Trying to find that coordination and balance. So go slow with this so you're balanced. You shouldn't be fighting to reach for the ground. Don't try to move quickly. Once again, I'm having those toes curled underneath as well. And I'm also going at different angles now. Kind of exploring those hips, putting them in directions that we don't normally put those hips in. I know it seems very minimal, but by the time you're done, you're going to feel so much better. These are great to do, not only if you're going to be squatting or something like that, but if you're sitting in a chair a lot, if you're driving a lot, just going through a little bit of a flow to open that stuff up, release a lot of tension in the back and the legs. Then I'm kind of just switching back from side to side in that far angle. One hip is very open, trying to make sure I have hips and not just a single hip, which a lot of us have that problem with. And we're going to kind of just sit back on our glutes to our heels. We're going to go into a slight kind of quadruped position, do a quick cat-cow, and then we're going to go into keeping that back leg elevated. So now we're looking more like that Spider-Man we do in class. Just kind of the slow evolution. If you can't do this, that's fine. Just go where you can, but we're going to kind of bring one leg to the outside of the hands. Kind of making small little circles, shifting the hips forward and back, and then changing it up to the other side. Same thing, just kind of gentle circles, pushing the hips in and out, just trying to explore the tension that I feel, creating a little bit more range of motion. Nice and easy through this. Now I'm dropping that back leg down. I can try and get that Spider-Man a little bit lower by dropping onto the elbows. Then we can kind of go into a thoracic rotation with this too. So the leg that is forward, that is the shoulder that I'm tucking underneath. And then I'm going to go onto the opposite side as well. So I'm kind of working as much rotation I can get as possible. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to go into that Spider-Man. We're going to try and drop down to those elbows. Get that elbow to that ankle. And we're just going to kind of tuck that body a little bit further under. Come up onto my hand to get in that position first, get that rotation. Then I'll drop down to my elbow with that rotation. That kind of gets my body to safely move to that next position rather than just diving straight in to that tough position for me. As always, I like to kind of just rock back and feel my position out a little bit. Now we're kind of going to be shooting those arms through, dropping the head and shoulder to the ground, and then coming back up. Just very slow, very methodic, entire opposite of a workout. Finding that flow, being present with yourself. Always go back to your breathing. What you might find is that you're not really thinking about anything except for what's happening with your body. And if you are, that's exactly what we want you to do. That's why I enjoy doing this out in nature, out in my yard. Just hear kind of all the sounds around and just listen to what's going on in my body. Now, so we're going to build a little bit of balance and rotation here. So if we can, we're going to just get into a lunge. We're going to stretch out the serratus anterior and the side of the ribs or lats or QL. Just go to where you feel comfortable. That lunge doesn't have to be deep. It can be real deep or not deep, but I like to have my back knee off of the ground, so I am creating some sort of tension. So my body does have to fight with a little bit of balance. And you see I lack that on this side. That balance and coordination is a little bit sketchy per se. I'm going to sit back into that child's pose. Feel how much my hips have already opened. Kind of bring those hands behind me, lean back. You could have the head back and do some rotations. I like to always center myself with a couple breaths before transitioning into other movements. And then we're going to go through a little bit of a flow, and this is really good for making sure we don't use the arms to get up off the ground. And I'm switching between right and left. So the right leg will come up. I sit back onto my left glute. I rotate my legs into the opposite direction, and I kind of pick myself back up. Sit back into child's pose again. And I like to go through this like 3 or 4 times. Once again, it's just very slow and methodical. I'm trying to control myself to the ground. I'm not trying to make my body just drop to the ground. I'm trying to gently sit back. It doesn't really matter if you go right and left or do a bunch right and then a bunch left. I try to alternate, but sometimes I don't remember which side. That's okay. Just do what you can. Feel free to use your hands as you need. Remember, we're trying to focus on using those hips, rotation of those hips. We're going to use a little of the adductors and the TFL, piriformis and the glutes to kind of just move that body around. And what we're going to do is have one leg tucked in, one leg going on the outside. If my left leg is out, I'm grabbing with my left arm on the left-hand side of my foot. So I'm grabbing on the far side. I'm not grabbing on the inside. And then I'm going to bring my arm up over the head. And as we inhale and exhale, try to relax. And you can kind of see that upper arm getting closer and closer to the body. It's very important to be aware of rotation on this because the body could want to drop the chest down to the ground. And then it gives you kind of that false sense of range of motion. Do a couple like that, come out of that. I like to add in a couple rotations. Once again, I'm trying to get my thoracic to rotate a little bit. Also, I'm going to feel that stretch in that leg. And I know you might not think you can reach your foot, and that's okay. If you got to grab onto your ankle, your shin, your knee, that's okay. Then we're going to go to the other side. You can kind of see how I'm grabbing onto the outside of my foot. I normally have a hard time reaching my right foot due to the tension in my heel and my calf. But doing that little warm-up before going into this, it allows me more range of motion. It allows me to get into that. And as you can see, I'm kind of slightly rotated down towards like my chest, a little bit closer to the ground on this one. The body's kind of all tied together, and with all the fascia that surrounds all the muscles. and it can be just kind of tacked down so I don't have as much range of motion on this side. Then I'm doing those reaches again with a little bit of rotation. Focusing on that breathing again. And we're going to kind of bring both those legs out. We want them relaxed. You're not trying to fight for that position. So get to where it's somewhat comfortable. If you have to elevate your hips so it allows your body to collapse forward, do that. But we're just going to kind of drop the belly first, then the chest, then the head, and reach. So going into a sequence, I'm trying to keep my back as neutral as possible and then curl it on the way up. So I'm dropping my belly, then my chest, then my head down, and then kind of coming up. And I'm going to do a couple slides. Now with my back rounded, so I'm trying to drop my head and chest first. And then I'm going to work out to the sides a couple times. And then make kind of like a wagon wheel or windshield wiper. Working my way from one side and then working my way slowly back. Here I'm kind of feeling the tension of what's going on in my shoulders, my lats, my triceps. I want to go into this kind of 90 and 90 and go back to that pancake that we were doing before. So 90 degrees bent at the hips and the knees. I'm keeping and 90 degrees at the ankle, if you notice that. And then I'm dropping the chest after I drop the belly down. So just like before, belly goes down first, then chest, then head. Just slowly working myself down in that position. Trying to breathe in there too. You can create a little bit of movement while you're down there as well with your head, with your shoulders. Kind of work everything around and just kind of feel what's going on with the body once again. So we're switching that up. You can kind of see front position now where I'm dropping the belly down, then the chest, and then the head. Kind of making a good little flow of that. Being conscious about the breaths that I'm taking. Once again, if you have your head down, you can kind of make some rotations with your shoulders or with the head, trying to feel the different muscles that are going on in that movement. Then we're just going to slowly kind of come up out of that. We're going to go into a tabletop now. So we're going to reach those arms behind us to where we feel kind of comfortable. And we're just going to slowly bring those hips up. Look for those feet to be kind of planted against the ground. Raising them up nice and slowly. Then I'm kind of stepping each leg out, dropping a hip a little bit. Feeling the stretch of my biceps on this is a good one too, in the front side of that shoulder. Then I'm going to kind of bring those feet in. I'm going to come up onto the toes. I'm going to lift those hips up as high as possible. So I'm creating a nice little table. I'm going to do a little bit of work here. So I'm thinking about squeezing the glutes. Thinking about the arms being locked out. Trying to create a little bit of mobility into that bicep. A lot of people, a lot of us in general don't work or do mobility for the bicep. This is a great movement to do. Kind of help free that up. Just dropping those hips down, shifting back and forth. You can hold for longer, you can hold for less. I'm going to go back into now dropping my hip a little bit more. Biceps feel a little bit stretched out. But just totally just rocking back and forth. Bringing a leg out and in. Like I said, it's always good to try and explore new things, new positions. I kind of do that occasionally here and there. Next, we're just going to do a couple movements while standing to try and lengthen that spine. So we're just going to bring one foot in front of the other, around that back, and reach down to the ground. Kind of come up, uncurl that back, reach back down. And then what I'm going to do is inhale and exhale, and every time I exhale, you should be seeing my upper body getting closer to the ground. I always tell by the distance that my fingers are touching the ground, whether my knuckles start touching the ground. But either way, I'm trying to focus on an inhale, feeling it all the way into my back, and when I exhale, I'm exhaling the air and the weight that I'm holding onto my body, so just releasing that tension. Then we're going to switch that up. We're going to go into another stretch on the other side. So same thing. Find that position. It doesn't have to be perfect. The toe doesn't have to be going directly straight and the hips being perfectly in line. Kind of go where that body wants to go, and obviously our goal is to try and find some new end ranges. So same thing here. I'm going to do one little stretch, and then I'm going to inhale, exhale, and I can already feel my fingers getting closer to the ground. How long you do this, like I said, is not important. But being aware that your body is making some sort of change or adjustment at that moment is what's important. We should, or like I said before, at the end of this, we should feel a lot better about what's going on with our hips. Now what we're going to do is a kind of a split. I'm keeping my toes forward on this one. It was a little bit hard because I was using this blanket that I was kind of sliding on, so I couldn't really get into the perfect position, but that's okay. And then what I'm doing is walking my hands out. I feel the tension in the inside of my hips, doing a slight push-up. You don't have to do the push-up. And then we're just going to walk the hands back as far between the legs. And like I said, you probably get a lot further between the legs as long as the palms are flat than I did. But I was just kind of trying to find my balance too with using little effort. Same thing with everything. You could rotate some hips, move your head in those positions, or rotate your shoulders, move your head in that position, see what you have going on there. Then do a little bit of a cat-cow. Recenter my breathing again. See if I find new range of motion in the spine. Rocking those hips all the way back to the feet. Just being aware of the ground, my muscles. We're going back into that seated child's pose and leaning back a little bit. Feel how good my quads, my hips feel, my ankles, my calves. We're going to do a slight little cool down. Just recenter our body back to the earth. Focus on that breathing. Put those hands on the abdomen to remind you to breathe into that belly, raising and lowering the lungs and the belly. Thinking about your back being flat on the ground, chin tightly or slightly tucked, so we can feel the stretch of the neck extensors in the back part of our body. Thinking about our muscles sinking into the ground. I like to do some big breaths here. Usually right around about 10 of them. Make sure I can get all the lungs or all the air into my lungs. Try and think about the air going into the right side or the left side. You can kind of even start positioning that air where you want in those lungs. Working through those breaths. Your mind should be relatively free of things. You should feel relaxed. And we're just going to create a little bit of movement before we finish up here. Kind of reaching the hands up. Kind of pulling those knees up to the chest. See if we have any tension there. As well as prepping our legs to get back into moving and walking again. Very methodic. No set number that we're doing here. Just kind of pick them up and down, going for a good reach. Then we can cross the leg over into this little figure 4. I like to just gently push down on the hip. See my tension. On the other side, I'll do a couple. Really trying to lengthen my arms up overhead. Feeling it stretch all the way down into my ribs. And then doing a slight sit-up. Slight circles around with the head. Getting some movement in there. A little rotation. Finish off with a butterfly groin stretch. And then a couple deep breaths. Hope you enjoyed that Sunday flow. Enjoy your coming week.